Okay, so this is part two of the zombification project. What we're going to do today is sort of zombify our eyes. Now, there's a couple different things I'm going to show you and how I would go about doing that. And the first one is simply to sort of dull the eyeball out, make it look like a great white shark, like they're dead eyes, like they're lifeless eyes. And the second one is actually to go steal an image from the internet, excuse me, borrow, and take what that looks like and paste it and blend it into your own eye. So the first way, again, I've got my layer here with my face on it. I'm going to go steal the pixels that consist of or that make up my eye. So I'm just going to get my lasso tool. And I want to be fairly careful. I always like to try to take a little bit too much if I have to. And that way you have pixels that you can go and mask out if you have to. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm actually going to feather that. Generally, I like to feather my selections because I've found that not feathering them, typically you end up with something that has really hard edges and you don't want. Okay, so now I'm in my layer one copy layer, which I probably should name face original. And I'm going to paste. Oh, that's not it. I didn't copy it. I'm going to copy it, Control C, Control V to paste. Now the problem when we do that is you'll notice that it bumps layer 2, which is, I'm going to call this my eye right. It bumped it right above my original face, which then it took on the hue saturation attributes. So now hue saturation and levels with these arrows pointing down are affecting my eye layer, and my original face is not being affected at all. So we want to get that eye out of there. So I'm going to drag it to the top of my layers window and make it the top one. So you should see a slight change because my eye, when it's above this, is not being affected with the levels in the hue and saturation. It's by itself. It's sort of in its original state. Okay, but now that we have that eye isolated and it's its own pixels, and we can see it right here, I'm going to do what I normally do, which is start by playing with levels. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer. Levels, I'm going to clip it, right click, clipping mask down, and I'm going to start playing. I can take one thing that's a good way to start is just to take all of the output. This is called output white all the way down. Now you can make it totally black like that if you want, but that really looks terrible. So I'm just going to take it down a little bit. I'm just going to start working these little samples down, and that's starting to get pretty nice. The white will make it a little bit hotter. One thing that I will also try to do, because I don't want it to look crazy out of place, I might zoom in one, and that way I can move over so I can see both eyes when I have my properties window up. And I'm going to continue to work this sort of back and forth and make sure that that gets down there. It's starting to look pretty dead. It almost looks too dark. And if I go do this, it's going to make it really light. So I might back off of this a little bit. So again, it's personal preference, really. It also looks like my eye is getting burned. But it also looks like it's deadening it. Easier said than done. So I'm going to back it out a little bit. And what I don't like is this red that's been created around there. So like I said before, I can always go back in and add a mask and paint with a semi-soft paintbrush. I can paint black in there to get rid of some of that red that's really bothering me a lot, so it doesn't look super out of place. I'm going to zoom out of that. You can always bring that back if you want. There, that looks better. It does still look a little bit too dark, but it's something that I can probably live with at this point. Again, we could always go back and play with levels. You could even take hue and play with hue and saturation, do other things that you want. You can even try, don't forget, ever forget blend modes. What happens if I activate my normal blend mode button and I start hitting my down arrow on my keyboard and see if any of those options makes that look a little bit better. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. That actually looks pretty good, the soft light, because it brings back some of this interior white right here. I'm going to keep going down, and I'm going to remember soft light. Some of it's going to get really bad. Just probably going to invert it at some point, luminosity. So I'm going to go back up to soft light, and I'm going to leave it there. Okay, now the next way of doing it is, like I said, we can go steal an eye from the internet. Now you have to really go try to find something that looks like it will fit from the beginning. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time trying to grab eyes that just won't fit, no matter how good you are at Photoshop, no matter how well you play with levels and hue and saturation and all of those adjustments and filters and so on and so forth. So I'm just sort of memorizing this eye and looking at the shape of it, and it's sort of squinted. It's sort of at a slight angle. The iris is actually sort of looking over to the right from our perspective, to the left from my perspective as the zombie. So I just searched for zombie eyes, and I found this one here that I thought originally this one would work, but then I realized my face isn't turned that much in here. It's close, but it's not quite turned enough to be able to cut that eye off right here. But then I thought, oh, let's give this one a shot. So I just copied and pasted this directly into my Photopea just to see if it would be big enough and I won't have to scale it down. And it looks fine. Problem is I pasted it underneath my levels, and now that levels change is affecting my zombie. So again, I got to get that out of there and let those levels do its thing on that eye right area. So again, always remember that you can flip, rotate images, pixels, whatever you want to do. So I'm looking at this eye that has the iris on the left, whereas my eye has the iris on the right. Well, I'm going to flip this image. So to do that, if I hit Control-Alt-T to get my free transform, otherwise remember you can go to Edit, Free Transform. And when I have free transform activated, I can right click in there and quickly go flip horizontally, double click inside, and we're done. So I'm going to take this eye over towards my eye, zoom in a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is, again, use my lasso tool, and I'm going to create a mask. So I want to select the part of the eye that I want to retain. And again, doing a little bit more than probably I need to, because I'll go back in and change that mask if I need it later. Once again, select Modify Feather by 1, and then create a mask. Bam. Now we have that masked out. And you can see when I move it up, it sort of matches, almost matches, doesn't really match. I need to rotate that. So I can again get my free transform, Control-Alt-T, go up outside of the corner so my cursor changes to that arc with arrows, and I can rotate this just a little bit. And that looks pretty good right there. Again, it doesn't fit. It just won't match up. Okay, so what I have to do now is I got to go into my mask, and I'm going to take down the opacity of my pixel layer so I can see through it. And I like where the iris and the pupil are positioned. So my job right now is to mask out the areas that overlap my eyelids and a little bit up here on top. And I might even make this a little bit bigger and softer and sort of blend, using the edge of the brush, blend that together. And now I'm going to zoom out, and that fits pretty well. And now we have to do some adjustments just like we always do. So I'm going to bring that opacity back. Way too bright, right? In fact, I'm looking at out here. I don't really like. I'm going to sort of feather that around a little bit. And now I got to do an adjustment layer. So again, I always, for whatever reason, I always start with levels and try to get the lights and darks correct. So once again, I can take, I need to clip it, clip and mask. I want to take this output white way down, and it almost looks ready to go right there. I don't like that line right there at the bottom, so I'm going to have to mask that out. I can take the darkest darks down a little bit more. I might take the midtones one way or the other and see if that helps. That sort of helps a little bit. The other thing that I don't like is how red it is. So how do we get rid of a little bit of color? Well, we add a saturation adjustment layer. So I'll go to hue saturation. Again, it's affecting everything, so I got to go clipping mask. And I want to take some of this saturation down a little bit to get the red out. Not all of it. I like the red. It's just too much. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out just to see what we have overall. Again, I don't like that little, let's see if that's part of, yeah, it is part of the original eyeball. So I'm going to go brush. That's a little bit too soft, and it's a little bit too big. And I'm trying to get rid of that little lower, that line right there. that I don't like. It's bothering me. Trying to blend this in. There we go. And once again, zoom out. And that actually looks pretty good. Now, once again, the last thing I'm going to do before I'm satisfied is I'm going to play with my blend modes. Let's see if something happens that makes this look even better. As I toggle down using my arrow down key on my keyboard, that actually looks pretty cool, but wasn't really what we were going for. Lighten actually looks pretty good. Screen sort of works, but it makes it look too brilliant. In fact, I like lighten, so let's keep it at lighten. And there we have two different ways of doing eyes for your zombie. We're going to leave it at that, and tomorrow we're going to work on a couple of other things. Make sure, before I hit stop, make sure you're saving. I should save mine. I've done a lot of work. File, save as PSD, Parley Demo, Demo 01. I'm going to save this out as Demo 02. You should be saving with numbers like this every day. Change the number. So if your files go missing, your computer goes corrupt, you only lose 1 day of work and not 2, 3, 5, 6, 7.